What's the worst thing someone tried to correct you about? Something you're specialized at. My wife has a friend who studied zoology who once told me that cows can't run or jump. I grew up with them. I, more than once, had to run after or away from them after they had jumped a fence. Cows are effing fast when they want to be. People without their ID constantly try and quote various laws about being able to order alcohol when out with their parents. I work in a pub, which is part of a chain. We're regularly tested for Challenge 21. No, I'm not handing you a pint when you can't prove you're old enough and wouldn't be willing to pay the 1,000-pound fine I'd receive. r/don't you know who I am is a great subreddit to binge these kind of stories. Oh boy, where do I begin? I'm a professional music producer. I've been for years. My productions get great reviews from people and are often singled out by music magazines and other industry professionals. People who know what they're doing are nothing but nice and supportive, but I get crap from salty bedroom guitarists all the effing time. Seems like every time I produce a young band, there's this one guy there who thinks he knows it all because he watched a YouTube video. The bass knob on the amp should be set at 10 because 5 years ago I heard that Tremonti set his bass knob at 10. There should be no effects or editing on the vocals because Black Sabbath in the 70s didn't have vocal effects. Double-tracking guitars? What the F? Nirvana had one guitar player and they were the biggest band on the planet. We're recording only one take. I'm not really specialized, but a Redditor tried correcting me about the geography of my country, Norway, claiming that it was very much flat like all other Nordic countries, and he refuses to believe me when I told him that it is the opposite and it's filled with mountains. I'm an ornithologist and have handled literally thousands of baby birds. Someone in the neighborhood was asking our neighborhood Facebook group what to do if a baby fell out of its nest. I told her to put it back. A guy hops on, no idea who I was, and went off about how the mom would never return if you touched the baby and that she should just try to raise the baby. Not easy if you don't know what you're doing and don't have the supplies. I informed him it was an old wives' tale. Of course, the mom would come back. That fired him up, and he went on about how I was an idiot and didn't know anything and I should just shut up. I informed him of my job and added a picture taken that day of me holding 4 nestlings. I added in an article about me for good measure. He decided to double down and continue to tell me I was clueless and he knew for a fact it was true and people should believe him because he was right and I should change professions because I clearly didn't know what I was talking about. Ugh. I've worked in a tire garage for nearly 10 years and am female. I can't even count how many times people try to tell me how to do my job. No, you can't cross-rotate my tires, you will break a belt, the tires will explode. Sir, we haven't sold bias-ply tires in over 10 years. We only sell radial tires, and the way I'm rotating them is specific to the drive axle of your vehicle. Or my personal favorite, sitting there as a customer lays into me for 30 minutes about how we sold them magnetic tires. I never had a nail in my tires until I bought your tires. I've had 3 repairs since I bought tires from you guys. This is a stunt to make money off me. If only I knew how to make rubber magnetic. I'd be so rich doing all my free repairs. For a short time, I was teaching in a school, and at the end of the year, an inspector visited to go over the way I had corrected the final exams. He insisted that the answer to a particular question was not the one I said was correct. He was the one who had written the question. I argued with him that I was very sure that I knew what I was saying. I had written a thesis about this particular topic. It took a lot of effort not to punch him in the face. I'm a climber. People tell me to wear gloves all of the time. There's a form of climbing where gloves would be somewhat acceptable, although even then a bit questionable. But in free climbing / bouldering, you cannot wear gloves because your fingers actually allow you to grip on to smaller pieces of rock. I had to leave r/welding for this reason. I'm a welder on nuclear submarines with over 14 different X-ray welding qualifications at this company alone. I would constantly get into arguments with people who are new and have no real-world experience with welding. The amount of wrong information being thrown out left and right over there is insane. There are plenty of very knowledgeable folks there, but they are overshadowed by the ignorant. I am an identical twin and a big biology nerd. I had someone insist that fraternal twins are paternal twins and explain why she'll have some because they're leapfrogged through her husband's family. Edit. I love the convos this reply started. I used the platform to say that I once specifically asked my genetics professor in college if a woman can inherit a twinning gene through her father. He said yes, he believed so. It blew my mind. Of course, it does not affect the man's ability to have twins, but it can potentially affect future female offspring. I didn't specialize on it, but when I worked at the deli in my local grocery store, I had a guy come in asking for some sliced ham. I asked him if he wanted Black Forest ham, honey baked, or mesquite ham. He looked at me and said, "It's not mesquite, it's mystique." I pointed at the sign and label on the actual effing ham that said mesquite ham, but he still corrected me. I gave up and gave him his damn mystique ham. This was a good 15 years ago, and I'm still mad about it. Got a ton of these when I worked at a video game store. My favorite was a guy who came in around the time Skyrim came out and asked if we had the new Elder Scrolls game. I said, "Oh, you mean Skyrim?" He laughed condescendingly and said, "No, I mean Scrim." Thinking he was just mistaken, I was like, "Oh no, it's called Skyrim." "No, it's not. It's pronounced Scrim." At that point, I realized he didn't even want the game, he just wanted to show up the girl working in the game store with his superior knowledge. Also had someone come in demanding the Mario game on PS1. When I said no such thing existed, he immediately went ballistic, screaming that it does exist and he played it at his friend's house. He eventually stormed out of the store yelling about how stupid I was. Guessing he'd had that interaction at a few other game stores that day. My height. I'm 6'10". Guy comes up and says he's 6'10", so I must be like 7 foot. Nah man, you're 6'6" max. And then we went back and forth about that for a bit. Also had the other side of that coin where someone will ask how tall I am and I'll reply 6'10", and they just straight up won't believe me and will tell me I'm lying. Like, what? Why? What would I possibly stand to benefit? I studied history at uni and worked for a while as a tour guide in Prague, Czech Republic. I had a customer once on a walking tour of the city go real snarky with me because I called the river running through the city the Vltava. He declared to the whole tour that that wasn't its name. I asked him if he'd heard it referred to as the Moldau, as that was the German name for the river during the Habsburg era when German was the official language, but he said no, and was I stupid? The river was called the Danube. I pointed out to him that the Danube doesn't run through Prague and asked if maybe he was thinking of Brno. No, he had definitely read in a guidebook that it was the Danube, and why the hell was he paying money for this tour if the guide didn't even know what the river was called? At which point, another tourist in the group showed him her guidebook where it clearly said Vltava. Then another showed him a map. And another showed him another guidebook, and so on until the whole group had basically showed him what a twazer he was being. He didn't apologize, of course, but at least he shut up for the rest of the tour. Asked to do the rear brakes on a classic Vespa. I think it may have been a 200 rally. Not sure, it was decades ago. So the owner and his pal turn up with the scooter. I loosen off and remove the rear rim and tire, loosen the hub nut, and go to put the rear rim and tire back on. "Oh, hey, wait a minute, mate. What the F are you doing?" "I'm getting the hub off." "Not like that, you're not." So I tell them I'm going for a cuppa and a smoke, and I'll be back when they've removed the hub. 4 hours, 4 bloody hours they were at it, hub wouldn't budge, not 1 millimeter. Getting bored, I go back to them, put the rim and tire on, screw in and tighten 2 wheel bolts, and using a mallet, hit 3 times in one point, then 3 times 180 degrees opposite, rinse and repeat 3 or 4 times, whole rim/tire/hub assembly lifts off. I charge them half a day labor for a 30-minute job. I work in IT. Users argue with me almost every day. I'm majoring in archaeology. I had a guy start talking to me about dinosaurs. I correct him and say it's a fairly common misconception, but paleontology and archaeology are 2 different fields, and I'm studying humans, not dinosaurs. He doubles down and insists I need to know about dinosaurs because what do you do if you're digging up ruins and find a dinosaur fossil? Call a paleontologist? He smugly tells me I'll be useless in the field if I don't know about dinosaurs and I better start registering for paleontology courses and leaves. I still don't know about dinosaurs. A guy that considered himself to be a music maven tried to correct me when I mentioned Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Ode to Joy. He insisted that J.S. Bach composed it, when in fact, Bach never composed any symphonies, not to mention that Ode to Joy is one of Beethoven's most famous pieces. I used to work as an outdoor guide on one of the Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California. Once I was hiking with a pair of women in probably their late 40s or early 50s. They were asking me all sorts of questions about the natural history of the island, mostly simple stuff, but they had a lot of questions. Then one of them hits me with this gem. So how often do you guys go out to feed the whales and dolphins? I was genuinely confused for a moment. What did she mean? I asked her. Well, you have to make sure all those whales get to eat. When do you feed them? It must be expensive to have enough food for them all. This woman thought that every day our boat captains would drive around the channel tossing fish to dolphins and whales until they were all fed. I have no idea where she got this, considering she'd come over on that very boat. It took me a little while to politely convince her otherwise. Amputees will regrow their limbs eventually. No, I think I would know if they were, considering I am an amputee. I'm a food scientist, so this happens basically all the goddamned time. One person insisting that MSG gives her terrible migraines. She was eating pizza at that exact time. Someone insisting that you should drink apple cider vinegar to alkalize your body to prevent diseases. I point out that's an acid. He insists it's not. Apple cider vinegar. Another person telling me how agave nectar is so much healthier and how I should replace all the sugar I eat with it. I tell her it's just a fructose-glucose mix and you might as well use corn syrup. She got really mad, like irrationally mad. There is so much misinformation about food that this is basically constant for me. I am a professional pastry cook. The GM at my new job tried to reteach me how to crack eggs. I'm a knife maker. A friend tried to tell me that the curve on the katana was forged in. No, it's made by differential hardness in the quench. And then tried to tell me that tempering a knife meant hardening it. I study computer science and was trying to explain how check digits work, so I gave the example of a credit card and he said, "No, I'm pretty sure they just encrypt the credit card number." What does that even mean? So, Canadian lawyer here. I used to do primarily firearms law. I taught a course in firearms law at university. I've been consulted on it by lawyers. I've had judges tell other lawyers to phone me with firearms law questions. I had a law student telling me that I was oh so wrong about firearms law on a particular topic. Eventually, they went and cited a particular case, which I politely advised them they were wrong about. They kept going on talking about how just because I'm a lawyer and they're a student doesn't mean they're wrong. Meanwhile, I'm just holding my tongue. Eventually, someone else chimed in to be like, don't you know who that is? And the case you cited was a case he personally argued and won on. Satisfying AF. I studied geology for some time and I was telling someone about how the area we live in is mostly limestone because it used to be sediment that was on the ocean's surface, and they said, that place we live is above ground now. It could have never been below sea level. Geoscience classes must not be doing too well. A friend of ours tried arguing with my wife, telling her she had the facts wrong about autism, diagnosing it, etc. She's a doctor of psychology at one of the top children's hospitals in the world, and she specializes in autism. I don't get corrected all that often, more like customers who feel compelled to explain to me how to do my job before they let me get to work doing it. Someone in my school, USA, tried to correct my Spanish. I'm Puerto Rican, a Spanish-speaking colony of the US, and then I started talking full Spanish and he walked away. Not me, but yesterday I was at a physics lecture given by Donna Strickland, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics last year for her work in lasers. During the questions afterward, some kid, either undergrad or young grad, I didn't know him, was all, "I have a comment more than a question," and proceeded to explain some laser techniques to her and that she should use it. Her response was "Yes, we are well familiar with X in my lab and use it." I was just kind of amazed at the moxie of a kid who tried to tell a Nobel laureate how to do her research in a room packed with hundreds of people. Edit. In the spirit of the thread, I do enjoy all the people explaining to me how academia works or stuff about women in science, seeing as I am a woman submitting her PhD within a month. I have kept fish for over 10 years. I worked at a fish store in high school, bred fish for profit, and currently work at a lab which keeps fish and other aquatic animals for scientific and biotechnology-related research. I've had countless people argue with me about basic fish care both on Reddit and in real life, telling me that what I'm saying is false, or that a certain fish doesn't need the space it needs, or telling me a cycle is unnecessary. I'm a nurse, and I practically like it when people try to inform me about medications. But I usually take paracetamol every hour, and that's why you're here with liver problems, Karen. I got shut down by this, actually. I was arguing with my cousin while we were in an old hydraulic elevator. I said the hydraulic elevators are slow, crap, and have far more failures than cable elevators. The guy standing across from us laughs, shakes his head, and says he's an elevator repairman. And that's not true at all. Shamed. Okay, another one. Not me, this happened to my fiance recently. We live in New Zealand, but both grew up in the USA. My fiance was talking to another American coworker about Yosemite National Park. One of his Kiwi coworkers tells them it's pronounced Yosemite. They're like, no, it's Yosemite. She wouldn't believe them. Everything. I'm a creative director. Clients always think they have better ideas and then waste my time and my team's time implementing their changes only to go back to what I originally suggested. But hey, whatever, they pay for it and I get paid, so I guess it works out for me. But it is annoying. I work at a children's hospital and have to deal with anti-vaxxers more frequently than I would like. I work with refractory, melting furnaces and metal for a living and work all across the world doing it. You can find a lot of information about any of those things by doing a simple Google search. Processes and specifics may require an in-depth search, and some you may not find at all due to a prototype method being used or a company secret. But tell me how the hell you're going to argue with me about something as trivial as the melting point of aluminum. I don't even need to be an expert in my field of work or even the same damn ballpark because it requires a maximum of 4 seconds to Google it. That moment when after 20 minutes of arguing about something, the person Googles it to prove you're wrong. That look on their face, the shame when they see you were right all along. Priceless. That flying is a dangerous mode of travel. I'm ATC. A complete ball bag tried to tell me that autism meant I have no empathy at all and that it requires extensive therapy to correct, and that he didn't believe I'm autistic because I'm hyperlexic, opposite of dyslexia, and I can speak. I have lived with autism all my life. It took decades to train myself to make eye contact. I have a lot of empathy for people, I just have difficulty understanding emotions in others when the emotion isn't logical. Also, therapy sometimes helps with autism, but not always. I have a ton of family members and friends that speak English, but none of them are as proficient as I am. I've studied it for years. I've taken exams to become a certified translator, whereas they've studied it briefly in high school and kept up with movies or music. I'm still really proud of them and always encourage them in their learning. 99% of the time, they'll compare themselves to me when the topic comes up, and they'll always say how much better I am at it. But then they'll ask me the difference between certain phrases, or they'll ask me which word or phrase is correct, and for some stupid reason, they suddenly don't believe me. I can see it in their faces all the time. They frown a little, hum, then say, okay, and then move on. A couple of times I've seen them post their mistakes on Facebook and Instagram. It's not horrible, it's just annoying as all heck. Actually, it's been proven that vaccines can cause autism. Bro, I have a PhD and work in an autism research lab. I'm a professional videographer, and anytime I bring it up, some people say my profession is on its deathbed and that anyone with a cell phone can do what I'm doing. That's totally wrong. I also once had someone try to explain local politics to me. I'm an elected official in my town, so it was fun to hear them be mostly wrong about everything. My parents are Italian, I speak Italian, and I've had people in the US who are 1/4 Italian at best or who once ate Italian food correct me on the pronunciation of any number of things. Yeah, I've forgotten how to say a lot of things, so maybe I'm not a specialist per se, but sauce isn't called gravy in Italy. Sorry. I'm a type 1 diabetic. My pancreas doesn't produce insulin. It never will. If I don't give myself insulin, I'll die. Those are all facts. They will never change in my lifetime. A number of people who talk to me about weaning myself off insulin or how I just need to change what I eat to fix it makes me want to punch them. It's been about 13 years since I last produced any insulin on my own. I know what I'm talking about. I don't care if your brother's ex-girlfriend's aunt cured her diabetic cat with cinnamon. Leave me alone and let me stab myself in peace over here. And don't even get me started on the people who nag me about aspartame. Yes, I know it's probably not awesome for me, but you know what's worse? The fracking 1/4 cup of sugar in regular pop. Now I'm grumpy again. Balls. My art teacher in school took the yellow paint from me and drew a massive sun in the corner of my picture. I was 5, and I was already effing brilliant at drawing suns. The cow. Trying to play MTG in college was a lesson in frustration. People would try to create their own rules, give cards abilities they didn't have, rule that if you countered their card that they still get to enter the battlefield ability, etc. And when called out for being wrong, well, that is how I play. Not to sound like a gatekeeper, but you aren't playing Magic at that point. You are playing I win because I say I do. Then the people that would blatantly cheat. When a man tried to correct me on the anatomy of the vulva, vagina, uterus when A, I am a woman, was born a woman, and have always had female genitalia, and B, I am a midwife, and not only was biology part of my degree, but I have a vagina at eyesight at least twice a day. The only thing that shut him up was me saying I've been inside way more vaginas than he has. He took it very personally, despite that being my literal job. I was doing a plumbing project at my old house where I was roughing in some drain lines. My ex-wife proceeds to tell me how I need to inventory everything we had on hand and make a list of everything that I need so that I make sure I don't purchase things that we already have, and so we can save money in a very demeaning and condescending manner. I was a foreman of a pipe-fitting crew at that time, and it was literally what I did for a living 40 hours a week. Made me wonder if she even realized what I did for a living. One of many reasons why she is an ex-wife. A drunk guy at a bar was trying to give me advice on how I should be performing and pursuing music. The manager had my back and was trying to hint at the guy that I'm a professional and have had a good amount of experience. He didn't get the hint and he wouldn't stop, so the manager finally screamed, "Listen to me, you effing idiot. She opened for REO Speedwagon. She doesn't need your advice." Manager got a good tip from me at the end of the night. When I worked 911 dispatch years ago, I had a lady who kept calling one Thanksgiving insisting I tell her how to cook a turkey and that it was an emergency because she had family coming over and they needed turkey. Apparently, 911, according to her, existed to help anyone in need, and I should have been doing my job instead of trying to be lazy because it was a holiday. She kept calling back until I eventually sent a patrol car to her place to tell her to knock it off, and the whole speech about tying up resources with her nonsense being a ticketable offense. She called back after the holiday weekend to complain to a supervisor who promptly informed her of the same thing and that all our lines are recorded. She hung up and we never heard back from her. Worked with relational databases for decades. Recently had deployment and the programmer says, "Don't forget to commit." Thanks for the tip. I had a weird disagreement with my ex's mother who should have been more specialized in this than me, but was mind-bogglingly wrong. She was/is an advanced practice psychiatric nurse. I hope she isn't anymore, but don't know. Her job every day was to take care of mentally ill people, likely many with bipolar disorder as it's common. I have bipolar disorder, so experience but no professional education on it. She mentioned that she had a patient with manic depression one day. I said bipolar disorder when I asked a follow-up question. Her, not bipolar disorder, manic depression. Me, they're the same thing. Manic depression is just the outdated name for it. Her, no, manic depression and bipolar disorder are completely different. Me, silently horrified this woman has at least some degree in psychology and manages nurses on a psych ward. I'm a biologist and my husband, a computer scientist, tries to correct me on bacteria growth. It's usually having to do with food, like when he goes to multiple stores and leaves the milk and meat in the trunk of the car during the summer for over an hour between stores. He thinks it's fine and wonders why he gets diarrhea when I don't. My friend and I went to Dapper Day at Disney last weekend where people dress up in vintage wear. One of Disney's photographers asked my friend if she was Disney bounding, interpreting a Disney character, and she replied that she was simply a generic dress circa 1955. The photographer began telling us how she was really much more late 1940s and that we may have researched it, but he lived through it, and next time we should look at a picture. We are both professional theatrical costumers whose strength lies in historical costuming, and her dress was taken directly from a 1955 catalog. Further, based on his approximate age and being generous that he may have aged well, this man was definitely not older than 5 in 1955. Lifting weights is bad for you because blood vessels in your eyes can pop. First, that's caused by the Valsalva movement in only extreme measures. Second, lifting weights has amazing health benefits, especially for your cardiovascular system. Just stop making excuses to not exercise. Psych student in Asia. Had my Grab driver tell me mental illnesses are not real, they're just for attention seeking. How eating disorders are a phase. Had the impression that it's prevalent in teenage girls and they just want to lose weight fast. And how people with depression are very pampered and probably had never encountered setbacks before. Rolled my eyes so hard. I work at Domino's. One customer called asking for a really out-of-the-blue coupon, large 3 toppings for $5.99 delivery. I said we didn't have that coupon. The closest thing was a boost week for large 2 toppings, carry out, same price. He argued and said that he's been ordering Domino's for years and that we always had that coupon. I tell him, "Sir, I've worked here for 2 years. We have never had that coupon." After that, he grumbled and hung up. Don't think you know better than the employees. You will always have less knowledge unless you are talking to a trainee. I used to be in the spirits business and sold a lot of high-end wines, Caymus, Beringer, etc., for those of you in the know. I used to go to wine shows where it wasn't uncommon to be drinking $100 to $200 bottles of wine. These things are loaded with wine snobs, some who haven't a clue or a developed palate to really be able to properly evaluate a wine. I have a ton of stories to tell, but the standouts are one person bragging to me that he had a 20-year-old bottle of Beaujolais Nouveau he was saving for a special occasion. He asked me what it was worth. Probably nothing because it has turned to vinegar by now, I replied. He got all in my face telling me I didn't know anything. Fortunately, I had the chief winemaker of a well-known winery with me. Let's ask him then. His reply was something along the lines of, "I'm not sure what the going rate for a bottle of rancid vinegar would be." FYI, some wines are designed to be aged while others drunk right away. I'm a stage manager who looks a lot younger than I am and volunteers in youth theater. I don't think many young actors know what I actually do, as the big important star actors will often take charge and tell me things that I decided for the show. E.g., no bags in this area, no talking past this area, sign in at the desk. Somebody at an online chat room corrected me very aggressively that Poland is a village in Russia. Unironically, I am from Poland and can confirm that it is very much not a village, it's a country. I don't know if this really counts, but in 8th grade I had this Taiwanese classmate suddenly speak to me in random Mandarin. Being Korean American, I had no clue what this guy was trying to say, so I told him that I didn't understand anything he was saying. He started teasing me and calling me a disgrace for being a Chinese person who didn't know any Mandarin, at which point I told him I was Korean. For whatever reason, this blew his mind, and so for the next 10 minutes, this Taiwanese guy who only understood like 5 Korean words due to K-pop tried to quiz me, a bilingual Korean American, on Korean. I ended up speaking Korean to him for the rest of the class, and I finally convinced him that I was Korean, not Chinese. Later, I learned that he thought I was Chinese because, get this, he overheard me on the phone calling my mom Ma. Literally every language in the world refers to their mom in some variation of ma. Was giving back pats and chest thrusts to a 1-year-old that was choking. I'm a paramedic and was off duty. Some woman came up and yelled at me that I was doing it wrong. This was happening in the food court of a Costco. I had introduced myself as a paramedic while pushing my way through the crowd, so when this lady began shouting nonsense at me, the crowd ate her alive. I work in construction. My dad is a general contractor and had been for 20 years, so I've been around it all my life. We were remodeling this house for a lady in Malibu. We had to repipe the whole house. She came in and saw all of the copper pipe and said it was wrong. She always sees them use PVC piping on her HGTV shows, and that's what we're supposed to use. I tried explaining for 20 minutes that PVC piping can't be used like that in California, and those shows most likely took place in Florida. She was insisting we change it. We did. The inspector came, saw the PVC, laughed, and left. She had to pay us to take it out and repipe with copper. And still, she said, but they use it on HGTV. I have, on multiple occasions, had people on here try to tell me I was wrong about how a particular feature of a popular consumer device worked. A feature I designed and have multiple patents on. But that's Reddit for you. I'm a Harley mechanic, and I swear most Harley riders have to pretend they know everything about their bike. I don't even argue with them anymore. I just tell them what's up, and if they want to debate about it, I say okay and walk away. LOL. It still baffles me when I correct people on my obscure name and they insist on saying, "No, I think it's..." Still makes me question my existence. I started a new job repairing arcade games and a bowling alley. Several of these moments have happened over the past few years. Tried to tell me how to use a piece of software and how it works. He was completely wrong and making it up as he goes. I know because I am the one who created the software. He won't speak to me anymore. Told me I should get real name brand tools like Stanley or Mastercraft. I was using Knipex tools, the pinnacle of German-built tools. I'm a teacher. In any given class, I have limited English proficiency LEP kids. I have 504 kids, and I have special ed kids who, in addition to regular ed kids. This means that when we take a test or quiz, there are several different versions. Some are longer, some are shorter, some are simplified, all sorts of things. I had a parent call and accuse me of giving her kid the hardest test on purpose because I don't like him. I had to pull in a principal who eventually got her to understand the situation. She wouldn't take my word for it. Keep in mind that a student's 504/special ed information is very private. So I can't just say, kids who get XYZ test are special ed and your kid's not. She was miffed that her child had to share a classroom with different kids, and I'm just like, what? Spanish teacher I had in junior high was from El Salvador. She insisted the state of Arkansas is pronounced Arkansas. Even got out a map to show me that it must be pronounced this way because it's right next to Kansas. Still wouldn't believe me when I told her I'm from Arkansas and that we've passed legislation on this crap. Was sitting around with some friends at a restaurant when a helicopter flew over pretty low. One of the guys I didn't know too well, and who clearly didn't know me too well, mentioned something about how helicopters work, and I politely corrected him. Disagreement followed, and he was getting pretty adamant he was right until he finally just gave in and said something along the lines of, "Okay, well, technically yes, but I was just going with a simplified version so you could understand. I promise you I know more about this than you do." Few moments have been as gratifying as the one where I just wordlessly passed him my flight instructor license over the table, and he didn't know what it was. Some dude tried saying we have the wrong chipset and that's why used GPU didn't work. I build and sell computers as my main job. Someone on Reddit told me my basic Spanish grammar was wrong. I live in Chile. I speak Spanish. Was at the range with my hunting rifle, Tikka T3 300 WSM, banging steel at 800 yards. Dude walks up to me in a 5'11" tuxedo with a completely tacked out, oversized black rifle sporting an absolutely gigantic Night Force scope. Pure stereotype. Begins lecturing me about external ballistics and how I'd never be able to hit a target at 800 yards without a gun like his and all his experience. He sets up, bang, misses. Grumbles to himself, spins the turret on his scope, bang, misses. This goes on for a few minutes. He never is able to hit the target. As he's getting more frustrated, I can see he's jerking the trigger worse and worse and starting to develop an anticipatory flinch. He starts yelling that his scope and rifle are effed up and someone must have messed with his zero. I sight in and bang, hit. Do it again and again. Guy just looks at me. I give him a grin and say, Army Scout/Sniper for 4 years. I worked in a jewelry store specialized in vintage, and this 50-plus-year-old man with a much younger woman dangling from his arm asks me to pull out a few pieces. Shushes me when I try to present the products and went on a pompous rant about, and you see, darling, in the Middle Ages, doctors would grind precious stones like emeralds to dust and make it drink to their patients as a remedy. They called it ambrosia. He turned to me, grinning, and added, but I bet you didn't know that. I just said, in the meekest voice possible, I'm sorry, sir, I think you mean electure. Ambrosia was the drink of the divinities in Grecian mythology. His mouth just dangled open for a couple seconds before snapping audibly shut, and he barked, and how does someone like you could know that? I don't know if it was the utter powerlessness on his face or my very serious, eager to please the customer face, but his girlfriend just started to gleefully laugh at him, and he just turned his heels and power walked out of the shop. Guess I lost a sale, but hey, he did ask me. I have a tattoo of Woody Guthrie. I had a man adamant that Woody was Arlo Guthrie's son and not the other way around. I was dumbfounded at how certain he was. You wouldn't believe the number of times people tried to tell me that people only become diabetic if they eat too much sugar and insist they are right. I'm a type 1 diabetic diagnosed at 14 months. Was I drinking soda from my bottles and using ring pops as pacifiers then? I am an art student who focuses on photography, and I have been for about 4 years, 3 in high school, 1 year in college. Every time I talk with my mom about an idea I have for a shoot or something I'm trying to figure out on my DSLR to make my photos turn out better, my mom always tells me, try setting your camera to auto. If I was a tourist with a point-and-shoot style camera who didn't know how to use a camera, I would use auto. If I am photographing the night sky and trying to make a photograph of the stars and/or the moon, I am not going to set my camera to auto. Edit. I see people are asking some camera settings related questions, and I see a number of great responses to them, and I love it. Photo nerds unite, LMAO. Whenever my relatives who didn't go to college try to give me advice on what to go into or how easy it is, I'm sorry, but I'm already a junior and understand my market more than you do, so please don't try to tell me some preconceived notion, Aunt Becky. Edit. I'm a junior in college, not high school. I'm just a nurse, but where I work you have to be highly specialized. I have more letters behind my name than in it, and it's a pretty long name, y'all. It's also a teaching hospital, so we have doctors going through their internships, residencies, and fellowships working on the floor with us. I had a resident, so yes, technically a doctor, argue with me because he was explaining way wrong how a patient's temporary heart pump was working to the patient's family. I politely interrupted and said he meant to say this, and he blew up and yelled at me in front of them, losing his mind that I'd correct him. I'm the doctor, I know! I wasn't even really arguing. I just said, okay, the way you're explaining it makes zero sense. It couldn't possibly work that way for any reason, and I've done this for years. This is how it works. Attending walks in to see what the fuss is about and politely excuses all of us from the room to tell the resident he's a dumb crap and to never talk to people, especially nurses, like that. I'm an intensivist and internist, i.e., I'm a doctor in the ICU. I was at a party and someone started having an anaphylactic reaction to something they ate. Thankfully, they had their EpiPen on them, so I gave them the dose to their thigh, got someone else to call the paramedics, and asked another person to try and find some Benadryl lying around. They started having some more wheeze a minute after the epi, so I got them on the floor and gave them a jaw thrust to help suboptimally manage their already edematous, swollen airway until the paramedics came with more meds / an ambulance bag in case. Random buddy comes by and says what I'm doing goes against first aid principles and asks me where I got my first aid training. I say I'm a physician and they ask what type of doctor, and that they should be in the recovery position. I get it. Community first aid courses teach you an approach that can be applied to everyone, but I think I know my way around monitoring an airway. Everything ended up okay though. EMS got them to the ED and they gave another dose of epi and discharged them after a few hours. I was certified as a diamond grader. I ran the repair department for a luxury goods jewelry designer. I love when people try to tell me about precious stones, especially diamonds. In the industry, the term precious stone hasn't been used since the 80s. They use the term gems. I did research on something related to autism, not vaccines for F's sake. This is my daily life. Woman comes into my workplace. I've never met her in my life. I greet her and give her the paperwork she needs to fill out. Oh, when are you due? I'm not pregnant. Oh, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Oh, okay, but are you sure you're not pregnant? And she points to my stomach. I totally give her the death glare, and for the rest of the appointment, I kept any conversations I had to have with her very short. I'm slightly overweight, but I'm not that bad off. The ironic thing is she was 3 times as big as I am. She never apologized or even acted like what she said was an issue. I was at a job where I designed replacement hip implants. Was going through airport security with a few prototypes and they pulled them out of my bag and asked what they were. In this case, they were basically a 6-inch titanium spike and a cobalt chrome ball. Lady asks, "What are these?" I said, "Medical devices." She says, "What kind?" I say, "Hip implants." She says, "Doesn't look like a hip to me." I, like an idiot who I guess wanted a cavity search, says, "How many hip implants have you seen?" Because I was having a lucky day, she said, "I guess that's true," and put them back and let me go. Lawyer here, represented someone on a violent offense and went through 2 days of jury selection. Of the 100 people we screened, I got 8 of my targets on the panel of 12. Ended up with the jury hanging because 2 to 4 of the 12 wouldn't convict the person. At the end of the trial, the prosecution stated they were retrying the case, can do it 3 times here if the jury hangs. The client was unhappy despite a generally good result. I was fired so they could represent themselves at the next trial. now serving about 85 years in prison because they were not trained to pick a jury or try a criminal case. I have a Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science in Computer Science and have nearly a decade experience in software engineering. But at my current job, I work in QA/automation. When you work in QA, everyone assumes you're an idiot who can barely get their pants on in the morning. I was in a big meeting where management was talking about how to decrease the size of the JSON configuration file that our product delivers over Bluetooth Low Energy, BLE. Having some thoughts, I offered to write some analytical tools that would find duplicate entries, there were a lot, shorten unnecessarily long strings, and estimate how many bytes could be saved. Management looked at me like a donkey had just spoken and said, well, that would probably require, algorithms and such. I'm not sure. Do you think you could handle something like that? Oh, how my dyslexia affected me. My own dyslexia. Not the concept of dyslexia, but my day-to-day functioning. I know when and how it impacts me and the difference to forgetting my glasses and being unable to see things at a distance. A small thing, but I know almost every college D1 logo and nickname. So, a picture of the University of North Texas pops up and he says, oh, that's the Georgia Falcons. I looked at the guy dumbfounded as he insisted that was the school and their name was the Falcons. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.